The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for how to enable future-ready workforce with the powers of VMware Horizon and 10-zig thin and zero client endpoints. I'm Michelle. Good to meet you. I'm the 10-zig marketing manager for the United States, and with me today is my colleague, 10-zig CTO Kevin Greenway, and we're delighted to have as our guest speaker Phoebe Hu with VMware. Just a little bit of information, both serious and fun, about our presenters before we begin. Kevin joined 10-zig Technology in 2012, becoming technical director and overseeing the support and development teams in both the US and UK, and is now our chief technology officer. Lately, he is happy to be working with a great team to steer 10-zig through COVID-19 and adapt to the changing market of EUC. And his favorite movie or TV show since COVID is A Long Way Up on Apple TV Plus. Just something fun for us today. Our guest speaker, Phoebe, is a product marketer for VMware Horizon. She joined VMware after graduating from UCLA Anderson School of Management. Newer to the industry, her favorite, most recent project has been learning everything about virtual desktop and its ecosystem while swiftly becoming an expert. And since COVID, her favorite movie or TV show is The Social Dilemma. Now, just a few more quick things before I turn things over to Phoebe and we get started. During the broadcast, there will be a few polling questions. Please try your best to answer them, as it really helps to gauge the characteristics of our audience. You will also find helpful handouts available for download that will be overviewed and touched upon during the broadcast. While the webcast is running, everyone will be on mute, but questions can be asked in the chat area. At the end of the webcast, there will be a Q&A session where your questions will be addressed. There will also be a survey at the conclusion of the webcast that we encourage you to complete for feedback. Finally, the webcast is being recorded, and I will explain to you where you can find it before signing off. At this point, I'm going to go ahead and turn things over to Phoebe, and we hope you enjoy the presentation.
Thanks, Michelle. Hi, everyone. Without further ado, let's jump into today's presentation. And first of all, we want to introduce you to VMware Horizon. So I wanted to start with some trends around VDI, virtualized desktop infrastructure. We were observed before 2020. So the reason why we're seeing so much momentum behind using VDI is driven by some classic use cases perfect for desktop and app virtualization. So we know even before COVID, there's increasing demand to enable remote work, and VDI provides IT a powerful tool to do that. And the second, IT was also thinking about Windows 10 refresh. The rollout of Windows 10 has been a huge inflection point in customers thinking about transforming their desktop and app management as they move to Windows 10. And naturally, VDI is a great alternative to managing physical PC. And of course, IT understands how important it is to ensure employees to have access to Windows apps no matter what devices they're using, such as MacBooks and Chromebooks. So VDI and published apps provides flexibility in device choice for enterprise readiness. And fourth, IT was also using VDI to modernize the way they are managing their desktops and apps. If you're thinking about centralizing the management of your desktops and apps behind the firewall or in the cloud, a modern VDI platform provides the same level of productivity for employees as physical PC, but they're much easier to manage and cheaper to own. And last but not least, many organizations are going through a cloud transformation, and VDI naturally fit into this journey by taking resources to the cloud and centralize the management of critical workflows. Next, please. But in the current landscape, we have to talk about the requirement of the organizations now. Even in the last slide, we mentioned VDI and apps were already important pre-COVID, but it has become increasingly essential during COVID because it efficiently enables remote work in a scalable way. We know that we are sitting in the current landscape and we have to provide secure remote access for our employees to work from home. But what do we do to even move past this business continuity phase into more of a business resilient and efficiency phase? We think that based off the Dell customer survey, 40% of the global workforce will continue to primarily work from home. So VDI and apps are becoming even more strategic to organizations after COVID. Essentially, the global pandemic accelerated digital workforce transformation and shifted the way we work permanently. So now I want to start a poll asking you guys, does your organizations have any of the below solution? So these are some of the popular options for VDI, and we observed that a lot of organizations are using these solutions to support COVID-related work from home initiatives. Awesome. Thank you for sending the answers. Yeah, so not surprised, Horizon on-prem is still leading the way, and we do see some of the the audience don't have a VDI solution yet. I think this is going to be a great session for you to learn a little bit more about VDI and its ecosystem. So next slide. So I want to highlight two customer success stories. So the first one is the Tyler Independent School District. Tyler Independent School District implemented virtual desktop infrastructure, Horizon VDI, allowing students, staff, and teachers to use either zero clients, thin clients, to access more than 130 district apps from anywhere and at any time. So now the school can deploy software updates and new apps to all schools within minutes, and the data is secure in the data center, no matter what the devices or connections are. And students can use CPU-intensive software at home or anywhere to help them study during remote learning. And then the result is by switching to a zero-client approach, Tyler School District will save $4 million over 10 years. And then the second customer story is about Preferred Mutual. So 100% of the Preferred Mutual employees use Horizon virtual desktops with company-provided thin clients or their own laptop. So during the COVID, they shift 100% of the employees from working locally in the office to remotely with the support of Horizon virtual desktop. And then they also achieve zero trust security. Horizon can enable policies to prevent any potential security risk, such as disable file transfer between Horizon client and local machine, or disable copy and paste. So if a device is stolen, broken, or lost, no company data is on the device. So this completely prevents security breach risk because all data resides in the data center securely. Next slide, please. And another great use case and customer success story we saw is among a top 5 global bank. So this customer story, I really want to emphasize the scale the VDI can achieve. So within a couple of weeks and months, we spin up, Horizon virtual desktop and apps, and then we provision for over 200,000 end users. And all these virtual desktops are managed centrally, and all the data are secured in the data center. So, and also investment made in Horizon help navigate, the shelter-in-place practice and to support remote access for 80% of their workforce. Next slide, please. So going back to Horizon's features, so, in the field, we observed that customers share some common concerns around VDI deployment, such as how do I instill agility in the VDI infrastructure? And how do I quickly add capacity with minimal resource required? And ultimately, does my VDI infrastructure support a future-ready workforce in a sustainable way? So that brings us to the next topic. What's required for a future-ready workforce? So in my mind, there were 5 major requirements as a part of delivering modern virtual desktops and applications. First, you can have all these deployment options, but if you're not able to manage these deployment options through a hybrid manner, now that's going to be your first requirement to move you into the future. So you have to have that hybrid support, being able to deploy desktops from anywhere, from on-premises to the cloud. And then, of course, the second requirement is managing all of these desktops across the board, whether they are on-prem or in the cloud or in a hybrid manner. So how can you simplify the day-to operation management for those? And security is always a huge thing when it comes to VDI and apps or any technology. And so the more security layers you can have in a place without compromising management and user experience, the better it is. So we feel like we can provide that next generation set of security solutions that are bound to Horizon to help with security. Your modern VDI and app platform absolutely has to be built onto a trusted digital foundation. You know, VMware for 20+ years, we have 80% of the server virtualization market, and that's sitting on top of vSphere. So that's the crux of the core of what we can build our trusted digital foundation upon. And of course, user experience. I mean, if any of us have used virtual desktops, public applications, or applications of any sort in any manner, if we don't have a good experience, we're not going to trust using those applications anymore. So that absolutely have to be a major requirement in meeting the needs for a modern VDI solution. So we have another poll. So after hearing all these 5 requirements, what's the most important feature you look for in a VDI solution? So there are hybrid support, simple management across deployment types, security, end-to-end security, integration with existing infrastructure, and user experience. We'll give it a couple more moments for the poll result to come in. Okay, do we have everyone in? Great. Security, ranked #1, and then it's the integration with existing infrastructure, and simple management, user experience, and then hybrid support. And then we're going to address all of that in the future slides. So can we go to the next slide, please? So I want to talk about, since the integration within the current infrastructure is one of the most important concern among the audience, I want to dig a layer deeper to show you some of the features that Horizon has that integrate with your current vSphere. So it started out with Horizon. We can take advantage of the market-leading VDI and app platform with Horizon, and the secret sauce and the unique technologies that we have with Instant Clone, with app volumes and dynamic environment manager to help you with that non-persistent cost model and persistent look and feel across on-premises, public, and hybrid cloud. But I think where we really going to shine and have a huge differentiators are the technologies that we have that wrap around Horizon. So that's the part integration with your current infrastructure comes in. So, you can take advantage of the VMware software data center stack and the intrinsic security layers that are built into that SDDC stack, all the way from vSphere and VCF with vSAN, with the NSX, with technologies that just joined our portfolio within the last couple of years, such as AVI for advanced load balancing and VeloCloud for better user experience. And even, Carbon Black for endpoint protection for Horizon virtual desktops. All these are native integrations, so you can deploy Horizon on top of that VMware SDDC and intrinsic security layer really easily. Then what I like to say, the cherry on top is really the Workspace ONE experience, extending it to the entirety of all of your applications, including virtual desktops and applications. Now supporting the most adopted digital workspace solution with Workspace ONE. So although we have great differentiation with just Horizon by itself, you can further leverage everything that we have inside of the VMware stack, starting from the software-defined data center all the way up to Workspace ONE, creating a unique end-to-end digital workspace that nobody else is doing in the market. Next slide, please. So we mentioned the hybrid delivery before, so I really want to emphasize on this and then the management of the hybrid VDI. A big reason that customers are seeing success with Horizon is because of the different options that we have to help them scale more into the future. So we have everything from customer managed options such as Horizon on Dell Tech Cloud to VMware managed SDDC through options such as VMware Cloud on Dell EMC, all the way to fully managed DaaS desktop as service options. So the more options we were able to provide choice for our customers, the more that they can take advantage of a flexible hybrid cloud model. So now, and then we launch a new feature called Horizon Control Plane. It's a set of management services that connect all your entitlement layers and management layers, so you can unify your management across all your Horizon environments. So really simplifies your day-to management, and you can flexibly migrate workloads across clouds. Essentially, it helps simplify management across all your deployment options we are providing for your hybrid and multi-cloud needs. We have the final poll question in the Horizon part. Are you considering hybrid cloud or multi-cloud VDI deployment for your organization? Yes, no, or the current deployments are already on hybrid or multi-cloud. Perfect. Awesome. I'm glad to see actually a quarter of the audience already have a hybrid cloud or multi-cloud VDI deployment. That means having a unified management layer is very essential for the day-to operations, because you don't want a siloed management tools for each of your deployment options. Next slide, please. So I just want to quickly go over this slide. Horizon support all these use cases and user personas like knowledge workers for collaboration, task workers, call center, and power users if you have some kind of vGPU capacity integrated with Horizon. And for industries, we support healthcare. We deliver EMR such as Epic through published apps, financial services such as trader desktops, and higher educations such as virtual labs with the help of vGPU. And next slide, please. So I want to talk about what's new in Horizon. We launched the newest version of Horizon back in August. We are very excited about all the updates and enhancement we've been making on the Horizon platform. So with Horizon 8, some of the new features include, can we go to the next slide, please? So with Horizon 8, we have some new features include new cloud platform support, for native VMware stack. So that gives the customer even more options for their hybrid cloud VDI deployment. And also we have full support for REST APIs, which will help automate and orchestrate services on Horizon platform. And we also released an VDI optimization pack for Microsoft Teams. And we already have optimization available for other collaboration tools like Zoom and Webinar. And finally, customers can use Linux hosts to publish Linux apps, something we call Linux host apps to reduce licensing costs. So these are just some of the updates we've made to Horizon. Next slide, please. And I really want to emphasize this enhancement we made in Horizon 8 because it's so relevant to today's workforce requirement since everyone is working remotely. So we have improved the support for Microsoft Teams, Zoom, WebEx, which will improve productivities by delivering a better, audio and video user experience. And by delivering these collaboration tools through VDI, we centralize the management of these apps for distributed workforce. So it's easier for you to update or release patches, and also improve the security layers of these applications. So that's all about Horizon, and I believe all these enhancements with Horizon 8, and then the intrinsic security that's built into the Horizon and VMware tech stack will definitely provide you a great remote working solution to address today's challenge. So now I want to pass the presentation over to Kevin for him to go into our partnership and Tenzig clients.
Thanks very much, Phoebe. That was really useful, and like you said, some of those points you raised are really very relevant for both the home working and some of the strategy that Tenzig have been working on this year. So I'll quickly kick off with a quick background on Tenzig. We're a solely focused thin and zero client vendor. We specialize in VMware amongst other products. We're actually headquartered in the US, in sunny Phoenix, Arizona. And as you can tell by my accent, I'm based in the UK, normally flip between both, but since March been very firmly planted at the home office, which is where I'm at today. So as Phoebe's touched on, we work really closely with VMware. We're a founding VMware Ready partner, and this means that we certify all of our endpoints on the VMware Ready marketplace. And the question that we always get asked is how we differ from our competitors. And it's really very simple. It's the fact that we're solely focused, and all of our staff are skilled and trained in VMware. So we work at much more than just the endpoint level. And because of that, we're often a front runner in many VMware innovations, many of which we're obviously talking about today. So to kick off with another poll, just for the first one, just to again gauge the audience, if you can just choose whether you're already using Tenzig today, or perhaps considering in future. So that's great. A good rounded figure there. Majority are already using Tenzig, with a mixture of no and a mixture of considering for the future. So yeah, very much in the right place to hopefully gain on some education here. So let's continue on. So very quickly, just to discuss on the VMware Ready endpoint. So we have a range of x86 endpoints based on both Linux and Windows. These are Intel and AMD based. We also offer a range of Teradici Zero clients. And as you can see from the hardware range, we support a wide array of options, including various display connectivity, USB-C, fiber options, which are used in kind of government and secure locations, as well as PoE. All Tenzig endpoints include the enterprise-free centralized management via the Tenzig Manager, which I have some slides on towards the end. And we also offer a kind of market-leading flexible demo program for anybody wanting to trial our products in your VMware environment or as a POC. So Phoebe's already touched on this. It's the remote working revolution. It started out in March. It looks like we're potentially in it for probably a longer term. We obviously had the fantastic news yesterday about the vaccine that's almost here, but certainly as of now, we've had a game changer since March. So I want to touch on the fact that As we can see from the first of these quoted stats, it took 15 years and a growth rate of 2.8% of employees working from home from a period of 15 years, starting from 2005. And this was largely because of the barriers that existed previously that were really stripped down overnight. Employees and employers really had no choice but to move staff to home when there were the various national lockdowns around the globe. So due to these barriers being removed, we saw a huge growth rate, and it's been predicted at 493% in just 18 months. And obviously, we're here today to discuss how that's changed, without using a pun, the horizon for today and the future. So following that shift and increase, we've seen an unprecedented demand for companies and employees to be able to leverage unified communications, or as Phoebe touched on, collaboration apps. And that's really been one of the big game changers at Tenzig. And the stats that I'm about to show back up that demand. So these figures are somewhat a little bit dated now, so I'm sure they'll be even more significant today. So back to March 2020, Microsoft Teams surged to 44 million active daily users compared to 20 million. And again, I'm sure today that number is much more significant. A major engineering and construction company saw a 129% increase in AV minutes and 143% increase in Skype for Business. And last but not least, Zoom, which announced tremendous profit figures from in June. So, as I said, we've seen a complete revolution. But before we talk about those, again, I want to talk about some of the key focus for Tenzig, which is really sort of places into a fortunate position. One of the key projects that we've been working on within our R&D team has been around the introduction of an all-new 64-bit Linux operating system. And this is really there to address some of the key challenges that were faced. And one of those things was due to the accelerated rate of growth of Horizon. Phoebe touched on a lot of these features that have come out. So as part of this, we were looking at certain things like the development time. How could we shorten our development and integration time? How could we better align ourselves to VMware releases, specifically the VMware Horizon client? And again, key to today's presentation, stay ahead of the security and vulnerability threats that are ever out there. So the first thing that was paramount in our vision was to better align ourselves to Ubuntu. The reason is that this is always a common denominator for Linux-based clients, specifically the VMware Horizon client, and the plugins and libraries that all sit around that. And the result of this is all about saving time, both in terms of initial integration and the ongoing development, as well as a reduction in the number of Linux packages and dependencies which we have to customize in order to support not just the Horizon client, but features such as the Blast Extreme protocol and the wider features such as redirection features and optimization features that we'll talk on today. So NOS32, which is our historic zero client type architecture, which was certified for Blast Extreme and PC over IP, has been a great success to Tenzig, and it was underlined by our finely tuned Linux architecture for supporting the Horizon client. So we really wanted to take the best of that, which was things like our user launch pads, our configuration apps and management agents. So to maintain that same approach, as well as the other things that were built in, like the low level objects, as well as the zero client style user interface that we had in NOS32. So with that, we present NOS64. And this is derived really from a Ubuntu 18.04.2, its long-term support release, and just with this a subtly changed front-end architecture that we had previously in NOS32. So this also includes support for H.264 and H.265 decoding, where supported in hardware, and also supports the various authentication methods, including Workspace 1, which we'll be covering in more detail today, but not forgetting, most importantly, the small memory and storage footprint to maximize endpoint performance and also minimize the security risk that's available. So it is available now. We started to release this early in the pandemic, and it's now included by default on most of our recent hardware within our range, and it's also available to existing customers through our website at tenzig.com/firmware. So some of those key features I really want to talk about, and they're again in sync with what Phoebe's talked about around firstly Workspace ONE. So Workspace ONE promotes a new way of working in terms of consuming the workspace from the endpoint. As we see it historically with VDI, the Windows OS and desktop was the user's workspace for consuming essentially apps and email, etc., and collaboration tools. But VMware Workspace ONE enables enterprises to maximize employee productivity and engagement and provide employees with the ability to consume apps on any device using the same UI or web portal, regardless of endpoint, operating system, or location. So from our point of view, whilst we recognize the reality is the Windows desktop as far as delivering that through VDI is here to stay for the foreseeable future, now was the time to embrace VMware Workspace ONE and allow users to access their apps in the same way they would across the other devices that Phoebe has mentioned earlier. So this means we have to give the user more local control of those resources within the endpoint, and to this extent we've integrated an all-new window manager that's better able to deal with various apps. In addition, we also integrated a Kiosk style browser, which allows the users to authenticate and consume apps via Workspace ONE through a secure shell of a browser, plus an all new sidebar and taskbar. So that's there again to allow users to use that area locally in the Tenzig endpoint to control their apps. The user then depends much more directly on the endpoint as VMware Workspace ONE provides the control plane for, again, consuming both the desktops and apps, as opposed to the Windows desktop that we would deliver otherwise with regular VDI. So just to summarize, the Tenzig endpoint's the optimal device for Workspace ONE because firstly, the VMware Ready approval gives users the assurance it meets the requirements of VMware Workspace. It supports the wider array of VMware features due to the fact it's powered under the hood by the VMware client and not a HTML5 browser as other managed or BYOD type devices would be supported, and the endpoint optimized exclusively for VMware and importantly can be centrally managed, making it ideal for both home and office. And again, the topic of today is finally the OS is secure and contains that small footprint I mentioned before. So another quick poll here, which is what's the most important feature that you look for in a VDI endpoint or thin or zero clients? Again, if you could answer that, I'd really appreciate it. This information is really useful to us. So the votes are still coming in. Okay, I'll close the poll and share the results. So this is really useful and really helpful, and in all honesty, this is definitely the way that we've seen this this demand with regards to centralized management. This is so key now with the fact that employees are estranged and remote from IT and from the office. So again, as part of the webinar today, we'll be talking about how we can overcome that, as well as some of these other features. So thanks for everybody's participation there. So again, the challenges of home working, and we're not just talking here about the social and mental aspects. The topic of today is really, again, the technical challenge to deliver that same level of user experience and management as we've talked about. So as we've already discussed, employees have an increased reliance and dependency on the collaboration tools that we've talked about today. And the key point that we recognize in discussion with prospects and in existing customers is that prior to this shift, employees were largely local to the VDI environment, if on-premises based, and even if cloud-based, they would have taken appropriate planning to make sure the architecture was there to deliver a cloud-based VDI deployment. The shift to remote working has increased the reliance on UC tenfold, and I'm sure every single attendee here has seen that they've had to dramatically change the way that they collaborate and talk with their peers. So the big thing really is the fact that the employees' UC and VMware deployment might not exist in the same location, and ideally what we want to achieve is to separate out the audio and video from the collaboration or the UC solution away from the rest of the VMware traffic. And furthermore, employees are connecting from home, as we've said, which are largely unmanaged, and worse still, depending on the type of endpoint. So for example, if they've got a proprietary or a legacy VMware Zero client, the audio and video might be sent uncompressed, and in worst case through USB redirection, which again makes the whole user experience very difficult. So employees' endpoints are now also away from the corporate network. So this adds further complexity in managing those endpoints. So again, some things to touch on, again, in relation to that previous poll, are any costs with enterprise management to provide ongoing security and feature updates, as well as shadowing. IT teams are now required to provide that remote assistance. So again, you might have to factor in other third-party solutions or an integral enterprise management to deal with that. There are solutions to this, and luckily they have been with VMware and with Tenzig for a few years. So I think we're really well positioned to be able to deal with these. And the first thing that I really want to talk about is optimizing the collaboration or the unified communication tools. And these are often provided directly via the vendor, specifically in the case of, for example, Microsoft, in partnership with VMware and Tenzig. So alternatively, VMware will offer them as a direct feature within both the agent and the Horizon client. And this was the case with Skype for Business in terms of the optimization pack before it, and also the same with Microsoft Teams around the Horizon Agent 2006 and the Horizon Windows client currently, versus something like Zoom, which is a standalone plugin. But the important thing here is to really check your endpoint hardware. So if you're already using Tenzig, talk to Tenzig about the hardware that you have and the firmware that you have to check to see whether it supports these latest feature sets. Broadly, the concept's the same. To optimize the collaboration or the UC tool, the regular desktop application such as Teams or Zoom is installed to the virtual machine, running alongside the Horizon agent, and dependent on the requirements, this is a VDI specific version of that application, or it's a minimum version as stated by the requirements. On the endpoint, this will run either a standalone plugin, as is the case as we'll see with Zoom, or the features built directly into the Horizon client, as is the case with Microsoft Teams on the Windows-based clients. And the benefits of this are really optimal user experience, since the media is encoded and routed locally to the user. Since the media is no longer forwarded to the virtual machine, as in the case of USB, redirection, or RTAV, the hairpinning is eliminated, and the plugins use the same native audio and video codecs as regular desktop solutions, so it helps with latency and overall user experience. And most importantly, it reduces the VDI overhead, because there's some serious grunt work that goes into encoding webcams and decoding video calls and audio, which is all now transferred to the endpoint. So as we've seen in Phoebe's slides and my slides, Microsoft Teams has been a major growth driver. We did do a specific webinar on this earlier, and this has a quite in-depth hour-long webinar around this topic. And equally, we have released a guide on this around the Windows-based endpoints, and the handouts are attached to the webinar control panel. So if you do want more in-depth information on this, I do encourage you to follow that. And equally, you can get access to our pre-sales and support teams if you need any assistance. In regards to the specific availability, it's available now for Windows-based Tenzig clients, so Windows 10 IoT, running the Horizon Client 2006 version. And for Linux clients, unfortunately at the moment we're dependent on this feature coming to the Horizon Client for Linux. We are working regularly with VMware on this, and it's currently scheduled for first half of next year. So we're eagerly awaiting this, and as soon as it's available, we'll be looking to integrate that quickly into the firmware. We do recommend, as is the case with Zoom, to use a minimum of our mid-range hardware, which is the 5848 QV or higher. Let's just take a quick moment to go over the Teams basic architecture. So as mentioned, the Teams desktop app is installed to the virtual machine, and this continues to perform signaling, authorization, etc. to the cloud services. And then for the voice and video streams, these are offloaded to the call-in service media stack, which sits within the Horizon client on the Windows-based thin client, and that's responsible for the video and audio encoding, and they're overlaid back to the virtual machine, which provides a seamless experience to the user. If we turn our attention then to Zoom, again, another major driver, but the key thing to differentiate Zoom from Teams is the fact that this is independent to the Horizon agent and client. So again, as before, there is a guide that's linked here, and I've also attached a handout to this that explains this in depth. Again, we're very well versed with this as well as Teams, so yeah, we can offer assistance here. As far as availability, it's available for both Windows and our NOS 64V clients, and we've actually baked the equivalent client plugin into our NOS 64 VMware firmware. So it's 16.1.22 or higher, and as mentioned before, that can be downloaded from tenzig.com/firmware. Again, a quick closer look at the Zoom VDI architecture. So as before, as with Teams, the Zoom client, specifically the VDI version of that client, is installed to the virtual desktop, and this can be either RDS or VDI based, and then the media in the form of audio and video is then offloaded to the endpoint via the Zoom client plugin. And again, the audio is then encoded and transported directly to the Zoom cloud services and essentially stripped away from the virtual desktop. So again, all of the traffic is routed directly from the endpoint to Zoom cloud services, as opposed to via the data center or via the Horizon on-premises setup. And then finally, as we saw with Teams, the Zoom client that sits on the virtual desktop continues to deal with authentication and signaling, but as we said, the actual endpoint is responsible for all of the audio and video data. So a good way to, again, segregate that traffic. Just want to touch on the Tenzig Manager before we go into some a demonstration. So this is the remote management, which again has been the real big key feature. And the key thing is that the Tenzig Manager remains free, regardless of the number of endpoints or features required. And this particular point around it being free is quite unique in our marketplace. So this includes remote management capability by leveraging our cloud connector, which is a component of the Tenzig Manager server. And this provides IT teams the capability to remotely provision and configure endpoints. It also provides ongoing firmware updates for those feature and security updates, and the ever important requirement to shadow employees is integrated as well. And all of this is done securely via the cloud connector, which establishes an SSL tunnel. So this provides businesses an integrated strategy for remote management of employees and endpoints, all at no extra cost, since the tool is inclusive to Tenzig endpoints. And again, there's a YouTube video link here that goes through in depth around the remote management capabilities. And I've just got a couple of slides to give the most common examples here, where again we've moved a Tenzig endpoint here to a home office location. In this mode, we're in an on-premise environment where the Tenzig manager components, the key components, are installed on the inside network, and then we have the cloud connector, which is installed to the DMZ, and this is the point that establishes the management plane between the endpoints located at the home locations. Then we switch to a cloud-based model. So it's a Windows-based management tool, and the freedom of that is that you can install this to a cloud platform of your choosing. And again, we can manage it in the same way, with the fact the cloud connector is in the cloud, and this can be permitted to allow management of endpoints at home locations, as well as the IT admins accessing either console, primarily the web console, through a remote browser. So we then come to the demonstration part, which I'll just end the PowerPoint here. So a couple of things I want to cover in the time remaining. So what I have here are two endpoints actually running inside of VM, but it's just to show you the simplicity of initially deploying the client, as well as the remote management and enablement, and give a demonstration of Workspace ONE as well. So this is this first step is setting up the endpoint without the management tool. So we'll cover both, time dependent. So again, I'm going to specify the location, UK, specify my time, that will do for now, and then specify my Horizon parameters. So those first two things, they set things like my time zone and my keyboard language. And then the third part is specifying how I want to connect to Horizon. So we've got two connection types in here. We've got regular Horizon, which allows us to connect to a connection server or a UAG or Horizon security server. And then we've got the VMware Workspace ONE, which I mentioned beforehand. So this particular demo, I'm just going to set it up to a regular connection server, and then I'll flick to another endpoint in a moment to show the Workspace ONE. Now at that point, we can click OK, and we're ready to connect to Horizon. So the key thing here is that we don't have to do anything in terms of disabling the desktop, disabling local taskbars. It's set in that mode by default. So you can see these very simple steps to get that set up. Now, if we want to go back into Control Panel, we can click that here. We also have here by default the user-based applets. So this is really useful if you want to empower the user, particularly at home. For example, if they want to be able to connect to their own wireless networks, if they want to adjust the headsets that they're using, for example. So we can go into Control Panel, we can go to Security Settings, we can put in a password, which will password protect access into the Control Panel, and then we can just allow the appropriate options that we want to provide to the user, and we'll come back to that in a second. We can also go into Horizon settings. So from here, we can adjust pretty much all of the common Horizon client related settings. So we can enforce, for example, Blast Extreme. We can change the SSL mode, various common parameters that you would expect to want to set through the Horizon client. We can also from here control USB devices in terms of excluding classes and vids and PIDs. So again, very useful for blocking things like mass storage. And again, we can do this either locally or through the management tool. Certificates, we can drop those on again through the management tool or via USB. And if we close out of that, you'll see the fact that the UI has been customized as we mentioned before. So that's a local endpoint. Again, pay attention to the fact that this one is still unconfigured. And now what I'll do is I'll switch over to the Tenzig Manager, where I've actually got a physical endpoint here where I can demonstrate a connection to Workspace ONE. So this particular endpoint is configured with Workspace ONE in mind. You can see I've also turned on the sidebar and taskbar, and if I click connect here, this connects in turn to the secure Kiosk browser. So you can see the only thing I can do in here is quit out of the browser. I can't navigate to any other pages just by simply selecting that Workspace ONE connection type. So I can authenticate into Workspace ONE, and that authenticates and provides with me my bookmarks, my most commonly accessed apps or desktop, as well as the complete catalog. So again, the difference here now is that if I click to launch something like Google Chrome, it will authenticate in the background via the Horizon client, and it will launch the app in, as we can see, seamless mode. And as you can see, it also adds that to the sidebar and taskbar, so I can use that to switch between, in this case, the calculator and Chrome. So really useful to use, and again provide the users with the same control plane that they have access to in any other BYOD type devices, but from a secure and managed endpoint. Okay, the next thing I want to demonstrate is if we connect into this physical desktop, and I'll give a quick demonstration of the Zoom VDI feature. So as mentioned, it's the Zoom VDI desktop, and as mentioned, the plugin is actually baked into the Tenzig firmware by default. So if I go here to video, we can see that it's enumerating the webcam that's locally connected to the endpoint to my office, which is currently plunged in darkness, and also my audio devices that are connected to that endpoint. And similarly, if I go ahead and click a new meeting here, we'll see in a second, if we join with computer audio, and let's just take a look at what's actually going on the VM. So if I go into Task Manager here and we look at the actual virtual machine, we can already see that the virtual machine in itself is doing more or less nothing. And if we look towards the Zoom application that again is running on the virtual desktop, this is also idle on the basis that it's the endpoint that's doing the work. And if we just prove that, so if I connect to this endpoint via SSH, again, it's running our Linux OS, we can turn on SSH as a temporary feature, and I can sign in. Nearly forgot the password there. And if we just look at the overall processor usage, we can see here that Zoom is currently consuming that amount of overhead on the endpoint. And as you can see, the VNC process is also consuming the CPU with the fact that we're actually physically shadowing the endpoint. So that's just a really quick demo of the Zoom VDI capabilities. And again, the Teams side of things on the Windows-based endpoint achieves the same thing. It's offloading that grunt work in the video and audio encoding to offload that away. Now, as a final demo, again, let's assume that this is my, if you like, golden image that I want to deploy to my other endpoints. So that's the endpoint here. Now, what I want to do is to generate what we call a template, and what that will do is it will capture all of those settings that we took and we set on the endpoint and build them into a template. So I'll just call it new for now. And what it's going to do is it's going to pull the config from that unit, as we can see. So it's retrieving the configuration, and it's then generating a template. It's already succeeded, as we can see. And now, if I turn my attention towards the VMs, the two that are running on my local laptop here, again, they're coming into the manager through the cloud connector. And now what I want to do is to take those two endpoints and apply that template that we've just generated. So we can see it's doing a step of retrieving the initial configuration from both those endpoints, and then it's going to go ahead and send the configuration as well as the template. So that process generally takes a few seconds, dependent on again if they're locally connected or through a remote working situation, as we've seen here. But already you can see the fact that that has succeeded. And then if we come back to those virtual machines running again the NOS64 firmware, we should then see once they reboot into the same state as the physical endpoint that we did the initial demo on. So that, as you can see, that's the same for both of those endpoints, again from a remote setup. And if I go into the settings just to finish off, we go into Horizon, you can see again it's set for VMware Workspace 1 and to that my Workspace 1 URL that we had before. So really quick demo there to show you those features. And again, you might need to go more in depth here. So again, either refer to those links that I put in throughout the webinar, as well as the handouts, as well as, of course, reaching out to us at Tenzig. So that concludes the webinar as well as the demo. We're going to switch now to some Q&As, and then I'll hand over to Michelle at the end as well. So let me just take a few moments just to review any questions that have come in during the webinar. So there's not so many questions. There's just a couple. The first one is, and if you wouldn't mind answering this, please, Phoebe. It's does Horizon VDI support normal vSphere encryption?
Yes, it does.
Perfect. Thank you. We also have a question, does Tenzig have a laptop style thin client for people on the go? Watch this space on that, really. We do have options for repurposing. So if you do have specific x86 based laptops out there that you wish to repurpose with the Tenzig Linux OS that can be managed in the same way as the demonstration I performed, then yes, we do have options there. There's another question about the team's optimization support in Horizon Client for Linux. Yeah, so that again is probably the #1 question for us at the moment. And just to confirm that that's currently in the roadmap for first half of 2021, and we're working with VMware around getting that that feature. So yeah, with that, I think we might just have another question in. So another good question here. So any thoughts on VPN support in NOS in the future? It's a great question. In NOS, we took the decision there not to include VPN support, with the fact that when it's used with VMware, in most cases, a customer will generally connect to VMware through something like the security server, or now these days the unified access gateway. So that in effect provides the bidirectional secure tunnel that enables users to connect to VMware. However, we do have in the roadmap coming out very soon a replacement for our fully fledged thin client operating system based on Linux, which is PCOS, 64-bit operating system. And the difference between that and NOS is that PCOS supports lots of other things out of the box as well. So it includes things like a Chrome browser and a Firefox browser, and OpenOffice type apps. So there is plans for VPN support in there, because that sort of solution would require that. So just there's some questions here as well. Will it still use FreeRDP? So for FreeRDP, if that's a question specifically when you're brokering the connection to VMware Horizon, it leverages our desktop protocol, or the our desktop client for that. But if you are specifically referring to a direct RDP connection, we do offer a version of this same platform to connect to RDP type environments. But anything that brokers through VMware with the RDP protocol, it leverages our desktop. So with that, Michelle, I'll I'd just like to say thanks to everybody's participation and attendance. It's been really appreciated. Thanks to you, Phoebe, for your involvement and assistance here. And with that, I'll hand over to you, Michelle.
Thanks, Kevin. Yes, thanks everybody for joining us today. We hope that you found the webcast helpful. Maybe you're even inspired. Either way, don't forget to complete the short survey that will also be emailed to you so that you can provide your feedback to us. Additionally, just a reminder, the webcast has been recorded, and I will be posting it on our Tenzig YouTube channel, on our tenzig.com video gallery, and you will be receiving an email where it'll have a link in there for you as well, and we'll announce the prize winners of the Amazon gift cards and more. If you are interested in a no-hassle-free demo device with Tenzig technology, you can go right to tenzig.com/free-demo. I just want to express that there is no obligation. It's 30 days, and you can even test out the Tenzig Manager that Kevin spoke about. Our email contact for the United States is info@tenzig.com, which is on your screen. And for EMEA as well, it's also located on your screen, info@tenzig.eu. Finally, if there's something that you really liked about today's webcast, feel free to share it on social media. You can find Tenzig on Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. And thanks, everyone. Thanks, the audience. Thank Kevin. Thank Phoebe. And we hope you have a wonderful day. Be safe and take care.